guys, it's Isaac here with M&M Home Builders, and today I'm going to show you some of the things that I look for when I'm doing a pre-drywall walkthrough on our new construction home sites. So come on in. So as you see, all of our framing is done. All of our trades have completed their scopes of work. And you know, when I go through the project, I'm just basically looking and checking for those things that I know the inspector is going to point out, as well as things that I know need to be addressed as well, right? So one of the things I start with is pretty simple. So in this county, even before our insulation inspection, they require that we have all of our holes sealed with expanding foam. So I'm checking to make sure any penetration through a top or bottom plate, whether it's interior or exterior wall, has actually been sealed with foam. So that's one of the first things I do when I walk through. Just looking, it looks like they already got those done. Haven't checked all of them yet, but just looking at it, I can see that they got majority of them done, right? In this county, they also require insulation on your cold and hot water lines. And so we have it here, but I noticed that over in this area in the shower or in our utility room, they don't have any of those lines insulated. Not sure why, maybe because they're on the interior walls versus that one being on the exterior wall. But that's something I want to reach out to my plumbing subcontractor for and verify before our inspection comes. Another thing I'm looking at is the placement of our receptacles in our kitchen to make sure that they fall within the counter spot. And again, I don't have to be the subject matter expert on those things because that's what I'm hiring my subs for. So my plumbing sub should be an expert on his thing. My electrical sub and HVAC sub should be experts on their thing. So I don't have to know all of the codes, but I just need to know enough to be dangerous and make sure that we pass our inspection so we can continue with this project and keep it rolling. Another thing that I pointed out yesterday to our electrical sub was one of the things the inspector called us out on a previous home was that you have to have a smoke detector within 10 feet of a bedroom door. So we have smoke detectors, if you see here, we have the smoke detector inside of the bedrooms, right? In both bedrooms. However, he also requires, or the code also requires, that we have one within 10 feet outside of the bedrooms. So I noticed that we have one over here, which is closest to the primary bedroom. So there's one inside the primary, and then we have one within 10 feet. However, this is not close enough to the other ones. So I let the the electrical contractor know. He added another box here, so we're within 10 feet of that one. So that was something that we had to get addressed. One of the things that I had to call my electrical contractor back out for as well is the lighting layout in this room. So he's already gotten it fixed, but initially this was a 4-gang box, so it's 4 switches in here. And I called him and I asked him, why do we have 4 switches in the primary bedroom? And I know we have the lights in the bedroom, we have the fan in the bedroom, and then we also have a light for the fan, so that could be a separate switch. However, the 4th switch that he installed was basically for this independent light right here. And in my opinion, it didn't make sense to have, all of the lights in this room on one switch and then have this one on a separate one. So we basically rewired to where all of those are on that first switch here. So from a framing standpoint, what our inspector is going to look for is that we have a king stud, which is this taller stud here, and then we also have a jack stud, which is nailed to that king stud. And on both sides of the window, it should have the same thing. So as you see here, we have the king stud and then the jack stud. And then going across it, we have this header, which bears down or sits down on these jack studs. And the reason that we do that is solely because the window is not strong enough to support the load that will be transferred from the roof, the gable end, and basically to our foundation wall. So by having this solid 2x10 header, we can then transfer that weight down rather than all of that weight bearing on our window. Here we have our toilet flange. We have our water line for the toilet. And then here, I'm in the primary bathroom shower. And I just check over this to make sure we have our shower head line, which looks to be center in our shower. We also have the valve here. It looks level. There's an indicator on these valves that we purchased. And then this is for a handle. So the shower valves that I like to install, including, you know, the covers and fixtures, basically it has a handle, it has a shower valve, so you can either come from the shower head or you come from the shower valve. And then I'm also looking, they have a nail plate here, and that is required. Anywhere that you have water lines or electrical lines coming through a stud or, you know, a 2x4 or 2x6, we have to have a nail plate across that. So yeah, I'm just checking those things. We have our pipe here for our drain. We also have a shower liner because this will be a tile shower. It's required that we put this in. So we'll get that in tomorrow prior to our inspection. But other than that, it looks good over here. So when I order my roof trusses for the home, they're custom designed for this particular floor plan. And so when our inspector comes to look at it, one, he's going to make sure that you have a set of stamp plans on site with our engineer stamp. And then as well as to look at the bracing for that set of roof trusses. So basically, these are individual framing members, right? And we set them with a crane, we nail them to the exterior wall, but also they need to be connected together. And one of the ways you do it is through our roof sheathing, which is the plywood that's on the top. But also we have to run 2x6s in some case, or 2x8s or 2x4s or whatever that the engineer calls out. And we run those across from one end to the other. So we do that to make sure they're all connected together. And it basically creates one roofing system versus individual components. So after I check the bracing to make sure all of those trusses are connected, I also look at our gable ends. So the very ends of the house on the left and right side, those trusses are called your gable ends. And so one of the things that I look for here, hopefully we can catch it on camera, is to make sure they're properly braced. That way they won't fall over and, you know, it's still creating a stable structural member. So what I'm looking for here is the board here, the 2x6 that runs from the bottom of the gable up to the top. It is connected to the side of the flat 2x4, and it is braced all the way down to another 2x6 that basically connects it to the other trusses. And we have that in 3 spots here. And so I know the inspector is going to look for that because on our previous project, he specifically called that out and we had to come back and change that bracing. So I made sure that I checked the bracing from the engineer, as well as I made sure that it was actually done on site. So when the inspector comes, we're good to go. We won't fail in that area. So another thing that I modified after our trusses were on site is I wanted a dedicated attic access platform for our HVAC unit to sit on. So I reached out to the engineer who designed our trusses and I told him where I wanted the platform to be, where I wanted the access to be, and he has to give us an engineering repair. So it's not necessarily a repair as in something is broken, but it's more so of a change to our roof truss design. So as you see, we have our platform here, which is the 3/4 inch plywood subfloor. But in order to do that, the 2x6 at the bottom cord, which is the bottom piece of these trusses here, that's not suitable primarily for a system to sit on it or for people to walk on top of it. And so what he required is that we put another 2x10 on top of that bottom cord of that 2x6. And so he required that we put a 2x10 on there, but they also specify how they want those two joined together. And in this case, we had to use at least 1/2 inch OSB sheathing with liquid nails and nail those two together so they act as one consistent component. For those 5 trusses, to make sure we had the platform size that we needed, we had to install a 2x10 and we had to put OSB sheathing on both sides with liquid nails and actual physical nails. And so we were able to get our HVAC platform and our attic access over here. One of the things that I do need to get addressed prior to our inspection is this hole right here. This hole is not uncommon, but it does need to be covered up before the inspector comes. And so the reason that we have this hole is because we insert a cord through there and tie it around the end of it. That way, when the crane is lifting up at the top of the roof truss to set it in place, we can use that cord to swing it in place. So while it's not uncommon, you know, it's a pretty easy fix. We just got to fix it before our inspection to make sure it's right. And while we may not fail inspection for it, I want it fixed prior to drywall to make sure everything's good to go. So one, we have this 2x10 across the door because we don't have the holes drilled to latch the right door in place so that the left door can lock into it. But also I noticed that they initially framed this door wrong. It's framed for the incorrect size door, which is fine. It can be an easy fix, but I could tell that this crew who did the door installation, they definitely didn't do it correctly. We have daylight gaps in here. You can see where they just wedged random pieces of wood. And while it may pass from an inspection standpoint, that's not good for me. That's not a high quality build that we deliver. So we're definitely gonna have to take this door out, reframe this opening, redo our flashing and tape around it, and then reset our door back in there. And these are the things that actually go into, you know, building a quality home. Again, while this will pass inspection from the county, it's not acceptable for me, so we're definitely gonna get it fixed. Also come into our utility room, and I just look at the overall layout. Now, this is a fairly small utility room because the home is only, you know, 1,300 square feet. But I just check to make sure everything's correct where it needs to be. So here I can see that they put this in the correct location. This would be our stackable washer and dryer. So we have our washer box here, we have our dryer vent here, and then we have the box where our electrical plug would be for our dryer. And this is the box for the washer. Also see that they have 3 wires here and they have this here. So let's start with the 3 wires. So normally most people go with a tank water heater, but I don't want that. It's gonna take up too much space. So I'm gonna put an electric tankless unit and it'll be mounted on the wall here. So I have a whole bunch of open floor space, and it's a pretty small unit that's sitting on the wall. And so for that, they need 3 wires, which you see here. And this is our water connection to and from the hot water heater, the tankless water heater. And as you see, there's a gauge that shows what our pressure is on this line. So part of the inspection from the county is that we pressurize the system and we set it at a certain pressure and it has to stay there for our inspection. And so if we notice that that pressure has went down, let's say we set it at 80 PSI and it drops down to 70, we have a slow leak somewhere and we need to get that fixed. And so I can see here it's still where we set it, we're good to go. But in the case that it wasn't, I would have to have my plumbing contractor come back out here and verify it before our inspection is actually done. For the inside, I pretty much completed this walkthrough. Some of the other things that I checked for were, you know, our recessed cans to make sure they match the layout. I told them we're gonna have a rough-in for a ceiling fan. I see that here. And then even small things such as, you know, okay, well, this is the wire for our doorbell, so I know where that's going to be. I see where our thermostat's going to be. And just those small details like that, just to make sure they're here, they're done. And while they may not be directly related to the inspection, I don't want them to hold up the next phase of our project, which is drywall installation. Now that I finished my inside walkthrough and I verify everything's fine, or I made notes of the things that we need to address, I didn't do a loop around the outside and just double check that as well. So one of the things I'm looking for on our windows, we have our flashing, everything's taped. We have seams on what we call our house wrap. So this paper here is house wrap or a moisture barrier, so that any water that hits this, if it's not properly covered with siding, then it just basically rolls off of here and it won't penetrate the wood. But around here, I make sure that we have our flashing tape, around the doors, around the windows, it's nailed down properly. I can see this is our box here for our exterior light. We also have a box there which will be for our outlet on the front porch. We have our doorbell. So yeah, the front is looking good so far. As you see here, we have all of our framing for the front porch. This is a covered front porch. And so everything's looking good out here. And this will be covered up as well. So in the final, we'll have a soffit material over this, so you won't see all of the framing. I'm at another window. I checked this window. One of the things that I see is that we have every nail filled inside of the window. And then I go over to our front porch, right? So this is the outside of that front porch. And in this county, one of the things that they also point out is that every baluster has to have 2 nails on the top and bottom. And I fell for that before. So as you see, I made sure that the guys put 2 nails on the top, 2 nails on the bottom across all of those balusters. So we're good to go there. Looking here, house wrap's looking good. We have it taped off at the seam. As you see here, there's that hole that we mentioned on the inside of the gable wall. So that needs to be patched and that needs to be taped over. This window looks good. And then I also see our penetration here, which is our condensation line for our HVAC unit. So we need to tape around that and make sure that's covered. And same thing at the very top there of the gable. That is the hole where we connected our roof, our crane to lift the roof trusses in place. So that needs to be covered. We have our hose bib for our outside. We have an outlet. I'm not exactly sure what the code is for outlets on the exterior or even hose bibs, but I know they asked me where I wanted to put them. I wanted one on this back corner and I wanted one on the opposing front corner. I'm at the rear of the home. And this is our meter base, and this is where our electrical service will be basically ran underground and then come up into this base. And I didn't really have a say-so on where we put this. You do to some degree, but ultimately you work with your electrical service company and they tell you, hey, this is where we're thinking about running the wire to, and this is where we think you should put that unit. Also, inside of here, behind this wall, is our electrical panel. And by code, we have to be within 6 feet of our meter base, or we have to install a disconnect. And so to avoid the extra cost, we just put it here, and they're gonna run the wire, underground to the meter base. The exterior door that we talked about on the inside. And so if you look at the top, you can see where they reframed it, and it doesn't match up where the house wrap actually is. So again, we're gonna take this door out, reframe the opening to be right, and then we're gonna put it back in there. And then of course, across the top, we need our flashing tape and to extend the flashing up as well. So that'll all have to be redone prior to our inspection in the next couple of days. But other than that, even the windows here look good. House wrap is good here. I can see where here we have our exhaust hood. So this is actually for our bath fan, and we ducted out through the soffit. So you won't even see it. It won't be like a penetration on the outside of the wall. It'll just come through the soffit. But overall, I think we did a pretty good job on this one. It's always going to be some minor things that we have to address and get fixed prior to inspections. But overall, I think we're in a good spot. Last things that I pay attention to is where our sewer line comes out. So in this county, we have public water, which is water from the city, and then we have private sewers, also known as septic systems. And so when my plumbing contractor came, he said, where do you guys want the sewer line? And I know in this area here, I'll have my septic tanks, and over there is my drain field for the septic system. So I wanted to make sure that he doesn't have to, run our sewer line all the way around the home instead of just putting it out here. And so as you see, they ran the sewer line out of the house. They put more mortar around it to, lock it in around the foundation wall. So that looks good as well. And then finally, I just checked to make sure that the job site looks clean. We don't have a whole bunch of trash and debris laying around. We are gonna have excess materials. We have some of them stacked right here that need to be returned, or we could use it on the rear porch. But overall, having that clean job site just kind of reaffirms the inspector. You know what you're doing. You have a clean site. There's no safety concerns in the way. So that is important, and also lets people know that you take your job site serious and you take your project seriously. There are plenty of things that I also check for, and some of which were addressed actually before this video. But overall, let me know in the comments if you guys have any questions, anything that you saw that I didn't see that we need to get addressed, or if you want more information on other things that I look at prior to our inspection.